really I just view money as values in action. What people say is important to them is one thing. What they do, who they give money to, how they earn their money, where they choose to allocate the resources, um, kind of defines who you are in so many ways in this life. And being a financial advisor now gives me a seat at the table for so many people's most important life decisions.
So, welcome to yet another amazing podcast, another Olami Mentorship podcast. And before we have our amazing guest, which we'll have today, this guy's a rock star of rock stars. He's young, but like the world's open to this fellow. Actually, he's a mentor for 3 people, which is insane, as you'll hear. Just wanted to give a little update of what's going on in the global mentorship world. On a sad note, sadly, we lost one of our mentees, Shani Bachar, who was an incredible young lady, full of life and energy and positivity. And sadly, she was murdered in cold blood by an Arab. And we're going to be doing an initiative to try to commemorate her memory across our many global platforms of mentorship. Shani was very into being careful what you say in positive word power. We're going to try to focus on that with our mentors and our mentees. But on the other side, on the flip side, things are going amazing with mentorship. So I wanted to kind of share a little secret with you, and that is that we are taking on a bunch of new initiatives and chapters and really scaling mentorship in a beautiful way. So we'll be doing some stuff with our friends out in the West Coast, brand new chapter. We'll be doing some stuff with some of our online programs where we have incredible programs. We'll be doing some stuff with college campuses that we haven't yet been working with. So lots of amazing and incredible stuff on the Olami Mentorship horizons. And really nice to share that. I know one of our mentees, I didn't ask for permission, just got engaged this week, which is so awesome and so amazing. I know she's talking to her mentor a little bit about wedding tips and, marriage tips. So mentors are for everything. They're not just for professional advice or character development necessarily. They could even help you figure out a wedding and how to make the most of the period of time between your engagement and your wedding. So lots of good stuff happening on that end in mentorship as well. And also really exciting to share that we are hiring. We just hired another incredible talent to join our Olami Mentorship operations team. We'll be introducing her one of these days, and some of you guys may get to meet her as your mentorship coordinator. So we're growing, we're scaling, we're thriving, we're hopping, and at the same time, we're also taking a deep dive into a lot of the existing mentorships to make sure that they're working, kind of like the startup mentality here. What works, we build on, and what needs improvement, we pivot. And that's really the way that, we're experiencing this incredible global success. So, stand board. And here we are really proud to welcome on board Adam Oliver, who will be joining us momentarily, all the way from snowy and cold Denver, Colorado. Actually, Adam said that when he joins us, he really would turn around his computer because you can see this gorgeous 14,000 square, snow-capped mountain in the background, but it seems like there's a sun glare, so he can't share the beauty with us. But hey, Adam's the sunshine in himself, and here he comes. So let's do this. Okay. And good morning to Adam Oliver, all the way from snowy, sunny Colorado. Does that make sense?
That's where we're at here. Good morning.
Okay, so for those of you that don't know, I met Adam probably about 2 years ago. We sat around and had some dinner from one of the local Denver kosher eateries. I mean, not bad for a guy from the East Coast, but not bad. And we chatted mentorship, and like he's been on board in a substantial way, just to not to like toot his horn too loudly right away. But Adam is more than just a mentor. He's a super mentor. He's got, like we said, multiple mentees. He's kind of like an ambassador. He's pushing mentorship forward and ahead. So I think he's such a great guy to interview today. And I'm excited about the short time that was spent together. So thank you so much for joining us, Adam.
Thanks so much for inviting.
Sure. So if you could just take like 2 or 3 minutes max to share a little bit about like where you grew up, a little bit about your educational journey, maybe what you do professionally, where you are in life at this stage and this age. You don't got to share age, just the stage. I'm sure we always like knowing a little bit about who we're talking about before we actually pick their brain.
Yeah, great. And my Jewish journey I think fits in pretty perfectly to mentorship. It's been something that I was thinking a lot about. So I grew up actually here in Colorado. Grew up with a conservative background, so I had a bar mitzvah, and after that point, really all Jewish connection kind of faded from my life. I didn't get it. I didn't have this deeper sense, and so went on. Went from Colorado. I was actually a competitive athlete. Was a college swimmer. Went to University of Utah, and then from there graduated in the middle of the
That's a nice
financial.
college for a Jewish kid, no?
you know, to be totally honest, I think we see what we want to see, and so being in a place so dominated by Mormons, there was so much good and so much potential, but I saw the hypocrisy. I saw I'm not one of them, so this whole religion thing was even further from my mind being there. When from there, I actually lived in Boston for a few years right out of school. I got married and everything was good. We were this power couple, both had professional jobs. My wife at the time, you can see where this is going. She was at Harvard. She did her master's degree at Harvard, and from there, it was more success led to more pay, led to more responsibility, and kind of on and on and on the cycle. We ended up moving from Boston to Minnesota. I really built a career in banking, so I was helping, company A buy company B for $10 million. Actually worked with one of the biggest suppliers of buns to McDonald's in the United States.
A lot of carbs.
$30 million factory to crank out something like 1 million buns a day.
Wow.
And it's an amazing business. And as this was happening, me and my wife at the time had a lot of disagreements about how we were going to raise children, kind of how we were living life together. And it ultimately ended in divorce. This was a kind of shook my world. I was 30 years old. You know, when I looked at her, when I looked at so many other people in my life, whether it was my clients who were these business owners, I looked at some of my colleagues, they were so successful, but I wondered if there was something more, if the success led to this more responsibility and this kind of being trapped in that world. Um, at the same time, they opened a birthright for 28 to 32-year-olds. So I was living in Minnesota. I was ready to move back home to Colorado. So I up and, quit my job. I said, I can find another banking job in Colorado. So I left Minnesota. I went on birthright, and then I spent the next 6 months traveling through Europe. So kind of living my gap year at, in my early 30s.
That's like an early midlife crisis, right?
That's right. It honestly it was because I was in Minnesota. I'm starting over. I'm questioning who are my friends, what is the purpose of the work that I'm doing? Who do I want in my life? How do I want to design my life? And I'd really never asked these questions. I was kind of on this track. I'd say there was school, there was sports, there was career, and it was all kind of this linear path. And so this was the first time in my life, in my early 30s where I questioned all these things, where I actually thought deeply about them. It turned out I didn't find the answer traveling in the beaches of Mykonos. I didn't find them in the Swiss Alps, which, as Rabbi Lando and I talked about, are slightly less impressive than those in Colorado.
Oh my gosh. Let's not start this now. Anyways, go ahead.
And as part of this journey, I ended up doing a 10-day silent meditation retreat in France and in Beaujolais in French wine country. And it pulled from all different areas of religion. There was Hinduism, Sufism. They mentioned something called a Hasidic practice. My Jewish connection was like, that's not the guys with the curls. That must be something from 1,000 years ago because Jews don't meditate. This isn't part of the Jewish practice. So that was that. Then I came back to Colorado and I thought, I'm going to leave banking and I'm going to get a degree in psychology and I'm going to do something in corporate mindfulness, corporate wellness. I want to help these people who were so successful in one domain have a deeper appreciation of what success and what kind of meaning looks like on a deeper level. So I planned a 6-month trip to India. I was going to go to India. I was going to learn meditation and yoga, spend some time on the beach, spend some time in the Himalayas. And on the way, I stopped for a week in Israel. I wanted to get the Jewish approach to meditation. I felt like I at least owed that to myself. It was a stopover, you can't fly from the US to India direct. So there, stopover in the Middle East. My week in Tzfat turned into 2 years in yeshiva. I never went to India. And it was the first time that I had seen authentic kind of Torah Judaism, this depth behind it. And long story short, we can certainly dig more into this if you'd like, but I realized I didn't have to make this dramatic career change. That moving from the banking side into now what I do is wealth management was kind of the perfect harmony of all these pieces. So I would say in so many ways now I'm a professional mentor. And why I say that is because moving into the personal side of money, really I just view money as values in action. What people say is important to them is one thing. What they do, who they give money to, how they earn their money, where they choose to allocate the resources, kind of defines who you are in so many ways in this life. And being a financial advisor now gives me a seat at the table for so many people's most important life decisions. You got someone selling a business, someone going through a divorce, you have someone whose parent or spouse just died. They're sitting there thinking of, how do I make meaning of this? How do I live my best life, my most full life? We're building a financial plan, but more than anything, we're with them in those moments. And so taking the kind of travel, that experience, taking everything that I learned in yeshiva and taking the Jewish approach, again, kind of coming back to the start is where I feel like now financial planning has shifted from us being the experts to being a thinking partner. So what do people want to accomplish? What's most important to them? How do they want to define this time on life? First, we start with that, and then we use money as a tool to help create that plan.
That's incredible, because I don't know if you know this, but like we've had a number of iterations of mentorship. And when we first started, even before the two of us met, it was more career focused.
Mhm.
It was strictly conversations about like your work environment, how do you get promoted, some of the struggles that you may be having with your boss, et cetera, et cetera. And we came to realize really quickly that most people, most reflective Jewish people, that's not enough. How many conversations could you have about a bad boss or about making more money? They inevitably wanted to have more, deeper conversations and more reflective conversations. And then we all of a sudden realized, yeah, let's talk to our mentees. Let's let the mentors talk to them about profession, because we actually try to match on commonality. But at the same time, life is 360 degrees. There's so many moving pieces. You have a mentor who's got so much more than just, professional acumen or just a perspective on the work. Let's talk about, like you said, who you are and where you want to go. And the money's a medium. Your job is, I always say this, there's life and then there's making a living.
Right.
Making a living isn't living. It's just making a living so that you could live life. But for many people, that's, something that they mix up all the time. So I love what you're saying, because on some level, even though you're a financial planner, it's just how do you plan the finances into the rest of your life? Correct?
Right. And how do we start every new client, we start with asking them what they want out of this life. We get to have those conversations, which is so amazing to me, because then say, if the ultimate goal is to spend time with your family, then we're using that decision to guide, okay, whether you sell the business this year or not, whether you buy the new car, whether you're giving more to charity. All those conversations fit in, and those decisions, I should say, fit in based on ultimately what you want to get out of this life. So we get to use money as this tool. Money isn't the end goal by any means. And it's fascinating too, the number of people that we work with. Our industry and certainly what we do skews towards people who are wealthy and can be very, very wealthy. Most of the time, money isn't the problem anymore. If you have $10 million, you have $15 million, and all your basic needs are taken care of. So we get to shift this conversation towards how are they going to make an impact? How are they going to leave a legacy? What do they ultimately want to do now that kind of they've solved for that making a living piece, as you had mentioned?
That's so cool. I remember a distinct conversation I had with a fellow who was doing so well in real estate. This is before like the last year when the interest rates went through the ceiling. And he was probably 50, and he could have retired in great luxury for the rest of his life. He owned more than one home, and he owned a tremendous network of real estate. And I said to him, like, why are you still working? Like, why are you still working? And he says, I'm not satisfied until I build a real estate dynasty. I want to die and my kids inherit a dynasty. It becomes a real estate dynasty. And I wish that I could have had him have a conversation with you, because I think one day he's going to look himself in the mirror and be like, what is a dynasty? What does that even mean? This is not like, you know, the ancient Chinese. Like, there has to be something more in life than just that. And he's a good reflective guy, but like in his professional life, he was so razor focused on just more and more and more and never stopping.
Yeah.
And ever, sounds like a guy like you could have really given him some pause.
The other thing that I'd say is, as well as, we kind of joke in some ways we've become a math lesson, the dentist, and marriage counselor all wrapped into one. This painful conversation about money memories, and on the marriage side as well, we always like to have both spouses in these conversations, because his and her vision may be very, very different. And it becomes more and more important as there's it's very sad to say, but there's this growing gray divorce of people retire, and they don't know each other anymore. They haven't built this future. They haven't built this vision together, and how important family is, and how important being together. It's, we like to say, whether it's in business or in mentorship, I feel like a lot of times we're here not to tell people what to do. There's nothing I like less than being told this is what you should do, but we can hold up the mirror. We can, in so many ways, like a therapist, be that reflective. Oh, I'm hearing one partner say this and the other partner say that. Maybe we should meet together. Maybe we should meet with someone to understand how you're going to reconcile these different futures. Because if he wants the dynasty, she wants time at home together, is there somewhere you can refine each other and meet in the middle?
So cool. So let's segue a little bit into mentorship, if that's okay. If you could share with our community, like, you have how many mentors have you had mentees have you had so far?
3.
3. Amazing. Are they all Denver based?
Yeah.
Amazing. And not to, my wife always says, don't dislocate your shoulder patting yourself on the back. But like, what do you think you've brought to the table? Like, once you're at your third already, obviously you're seeing something, you're seeing success, you're feeling meaning from it. What do you feel as a mentor you're getting out of the mentorships?
Yeah, it's been really interesting to have some challenging questions and some deeper things, that maybe I'm grappling with as well. I had with one of my mentees this whole conversation around. So he's a high school track coach, among other things, and he's asked me questions around some of this conversation that we have. Where do I? Someone comes to me, they're concerned about there's mental health issues, things like that. I'm not a mental health professional, so how do I have this conversation with them? What's appropriate advice to give, and where is it appropriate for me to kind of refer out? How do I have these conversations? And as we're grappling through some of these real life scenarios, I'm thinking in this conversation right now, as a mentor, how do I express what I can, and where do I say I don't know, where it's appropriate? I think one of the things that, when I initially think mentorship, I think someone in the Jewish community, Naftali Horowitz, who's recently, he's a financial advisor, similar business, but I would say he's 20 years older than me, and certainly on another plane. And then when I think about spiritual advice or guidance, I'm 5 years into Baal Tshuva. I spent a few years in yeshiva. Kind of, what do I know compared to Rabbi Landau, compared to Rabbi Wolf in Colorado, compared to, the great rabbis of a generation. And so it's recognizing that we can all be experts in the place that we are. So there's something really great about having someone who's one step ahead of you in certain areas of your life. If someone is considering maybe going to yeshiva, it's a whole different conversation to talk to someone who was there 4 years ago compared to someone who, finished their time in yeshiva 40 years ago. Right. Yeah, I would say that's, yeah.
I want to try to do something here. So we polled a number of our mentees, and we asked them, when we do have broader conversations with just general mentors, not obviously not their own mentor, like, what are some questions or things that they would love to have an insight into? So if it's okay, I'm gonna ask you 1 or 2 questions. Sure. And then kind of jump back to Adam's journey versus just these questions. They're not just, they're amazing. So I'm assuming you're probably this is totally assumption, high 30s. Is that true?
That is 37.
Okay, great. So 37. Thank God I was okay here. They say you're never supposed to do that, but whatever. So you got 3+ decades, under your belt. What do you say right now is your absolute greatest success?
I think it's honestly being open to the journey of going through radical change. It's one of the big things that I think so much about now is change. Is there's all these models of theories of state of change and stages of change. You know, life was fine in a lot of ways. You know, there was this angst, there was this um, challenge to wrestle with. You know, I say it was fine materially, you know, I had professional success, and to radically disrupt, you know, to go back to change life wholesale, to become a religious Jew in so many ways, to get remarried, to have a family, to restart a career. There was a lot of anxiety and a lot of fear around like what's it going to be like to wear a kippah in the office? What's it going to be like to go back after, you know, being a lead banker, of now joining a new profession, re-entering this and having all these great ideals and hopes, but can I actually do this? And kind of bearing through that. I'd say those really challenging personal struggles and grappling with change and kind of seeing it's possible to come out the other side. I would say that's been the highlight thus far.
That's amazing, because I think most people, their default is cruise control. Let me just keep going the same way that I was going, and you know, they have the Teslas now that just drive for you. I don't want to be in the driver's seat. Let life drive me. But then
Yeah.
you don't really own life, you know? So
Yes.
yeah, change is hard, but sometimes you look in the rearview mirror and change is the best thing that ever happened to you. So that's amazing. I think it's a very valuable lesson. I can't wait to hear, you know, in a decade from now, what your next decade is gonna teach you. And maybe your Mitzvah Shem will have that conversation. You never know.
Man.
Um, who would you say in your own life has been like, if you actually have like a mentor, somebody who you know, when you look back at in the rearview mirror of life, you're like, that's probably a person that I would call a mentor.
Yeah. So I think when I think mentor, I also think the word role model, and someone who was such a defining role model for me. So when I was on my Jewish journey, I was okay. I'm a type A driven guy, you know. So Tzfat was great. Tzfat really helped break this paradigm for me of what an Orthodox Jew was, but it wasn't home. You know, I needed to be around. I ended up at a yeshiva where the head of the yeshiva was a Wall Street banker. I felt much more at home there. So I went to, and this was in the Har Nof neighborhood of Jerusalem when I was at Machon Yaakov. There was a family that we went to where I'm sitting at a Shabbat meal, and it was someone that I'd never met before, and I'm seeing him sitting at the end of the table. He has his son on one knee and his daughter on the other. He's, you know, around all this family. He's talking about, well, first he's disrupted his family. He's the CEO of this company, and he moves to Jerusalem. And he's sharing how this week's Torah is basically verbatim, or I should say, what was in this week's Harvard Business Journal review is basically verbatim what's in the Torah portion. So he's the CEO of a company. He's there present with his kids. He's living this spiritual life, and I think that there's so many role models out there who are so incomplete. You know, I've been watching The Last Dance, the Netflix documentary about Michael Jordan. I watch it when I work out. And one of the things I love about Michael Jordan is how clear he is I'm not a role model. I'm a basketball player. I'm not involved in politics. I'm not, you know, how you look at my gambling problems and some of these things. Don't look at me as a role model. I never wanted to be a role model. I'm here to play basketball. I'm here to let my skills show. And for me to see someone I'd never seen in my life, this kind of complete person, and to hear his journey and the things that he gave up, but the opportunities that came with it of him also becoming religious and changing his life in so many ways. That was the really the kind of final turning point of me being convinced around this way of life, of seeing that type of community, seeing that type of person who just seemed to, from the interactions I had, just embody being a complete person.
That's wonderful. And that's amazing. I think, you know, one of the dreams, you know, there's something called DID, Dreaming the Impossible Dream. I don't know if you ever heard of that acronym. You know, one of the dreaming the impossible dream that we have in the, you know, in building our mentorship community is that students should be able to have a window into the life of some of their mentors. We have some incredible mentors. not just that they should get, professional guidance or even just, guidance about, let them see that this person is what is quote unquote living the life, that they really, and balance, oh my gosh, your career, and especially if you're being really successful, and your family, and just like prioritizing, that's something which is really precious, and it's not common. It's really not common.
Yeah.
Listen, I don't know, maybe as a financial consultant, you see this, but like people who have a lot of financial success don't necessarily, that does not translate into having success in other areas of their life at all, literally.
Yeah.
Um, I remember, as a rabbi that I crossed paths with a young fellow who, from the outside, it seemed like he had everything. He's a good-looking, dashing guy, really successful, massive home, a fleet of cars, the summer homes and everything. But as we became closer to one another, and to his credit, he was looking for somebody to really help him, I realized that beneath this shell, there was so much pain and nothing was in order.
Yeah.
And to the outside world, it seemed like, everyone would be like, I wish I was this guy.
Yeah.
And then just take a drop deeper and you'd run for the hills, or in your case, the mountains, right? So, yeah, I think I'd love it that the mentees, and this is like one of our big, form a long-term relationship, go to their home for Shabbat if they want to have you.
Yeah.
Sit down and see what they do, when they come home from a long day, that they don't just, veg, they spiritually grow. They spend every time trying to learn or to connect to God. Like, these are deeper things, and they take your life to a whole new plane. So you seem like the kind of guy that I wish I had as a mentor. I'm just saying, what would you tell a mentee who's about to have their first meeting with their mentor? And I know one of the questions that we try to push the mentors to ask is like, what do you want to gain out of this mentorship? But like, I'm kind of like, turning the tables now. Take yourself back, at 15, 20 years, and you had this opportunity to have a great guy in Denver who's you. Like, what would you tell them? Like, what's the best advice I could give you to really try to gain from this mentorship the most that you can?
I think about for me personally, maybe people have a similar personality to me, is to recognize that relationships and that change takes time. It's easy to jump in and to either jump to conclusions. I know that I've had some conversations, whether in the mentorship program or kind of generally with some of the kind of Jewish outreach initiatives, of people either, it's black and white. Well, I'm either going to be, I'm not sure I check all the boxes, or going to get to this place where I'm, wearing a black hat and a rabbi, or on the other side, any custom, anything taking on is kind of scary here. And recognizing that building a relationship with someone, I think there's recent data around this. I forget exactly what the number was, but I think it's something like 18 hours or 20 meetings with someone until you really build a friendship. And recognizing that these things take time, and that certainly change. There's all these stages of change that we have to go through, that you can't skip, and that it can be easy to go too fast or kind of too slow, but just recognizing that things take time to let it happen naturally and organically, and that building the connection leads to kind of wherever it's meant to lead. So I would say that, and having kind of on a similar vein, going into things without too much of a set objective, because one of the things that I love about Torah and that I love about growth, similar, is that you don't know where it's going to end up. We talk about this all the time. Kind of, my last financial planning example is, someone wants to retire with $1 million. So you can build a path. Okay, you're going to save $20,000 a year. You're going to have compound growth. And so then in 20 years, you're going to get there. But it turns out along the way, you need to buy a new car, and then you have another baby, and then you get a promotion, you get more pay. And then you had a medical expense, so some of this money goes away. That we have a general direction that we want to go, but how we get there, the steps to take, are totally undefined, totally unknowable. And being patient and letting the process go. And I say that's similar to Torah insofar as when you get into the Talmud, you start out at one topic and you bring an example from a totally different area, and it pulls you learn something you never thought that you would learn. And then, and now you understand how that relates to the issue at hand. And it's very, very hard to see the forest for the trees when you're in it.
Amazing. I mean, I think it's wonderful insight. Can I ask you like one last question? You know, you're saying that you're about 5 years into your quote unquote Jewish journey in a substantial way. Like, I think one of the scariest things on one hand, but personally, one of the most amazing things about Judaism is Shabbat. You know,
Yeah.
personally, the fact that I shut my phone off and I disconnect from technology for 25 hours literally is like CPR in my life. It literally is. Once
Yeah.
every 7 days, I get CPR. On the other hand, looking at it from a different perspective, we're such a connected society
Yeah.
and we never stop. And there's opportunities and just many things that we really could do on Shabbat that we don't do. Like, could you talk a little bit about somebody who's like, I guess you could say on some level, relatively novel when it comes to this topic? Like, what does Shabbat mean with you? What were your trepidations? And, now as a father and as a husband, like, does Shabbat have different meaning than when you were single? You could just share what's in your mind and your heart.
Yeah. That was one of the biggest things that struck me when I first got to Tzfat, and I really kept Shabbat for the first time ever when I was there. I never even really had attempted Shabbat or really had an appreciation more than lighting candles and maybe eating some food. I don't know how now to function without that break. Insofar as I find it really takes time to get into it. Like I find now being a working guy, especially Shabbat is so early in the winter. I'm finishing up meetings and calls and I have all these things in my mind, and then Shabbat starts and it's can be really, really hard to have this disconnection. But then I find waking up and having this time to chase around a 2-year-old, spending time as a family, knowing that you can sit with friends. I mean, what other time can you sit and have a 4-hour meal with people, invited into the homes of basically strangers, being able to go anywhere in the world and to feel this connection. I should say, Olami, when I was traveling, set me up with a family in Paris when I was traveling, and being able to experience that. This is kind of related to what you're saying, but it left such an impact on me that I just need to share it. When I was traveling and I was in Rome, I went to the Great Synagogue in Rome, and underneath it there was a museum. And in the museum, they were saying no other people after losing political independence, which when the Second Temple was destroyed and Jews have been scattered, no other people in losing political independence have kept their identity and kept their culture other than the Jews. And the thought of over time and over space, everyone doing the same thing, that had said, thinking about making Kiddush and seeing in Rome, seeing 500-year-old, 1,000-year-old Kiddush cups and challah boards that look exactly like what we have at our table now. I think that sense of connection across the world, and in such a divided place, and such a, I'm just as guilty as anyone with these devices that suck us in and pull us in so many different directions, that having that time, and knowing that we're all together, whether we're in God forbid, and you're in Gaza, you're in Israel, you're anywhere around the world, that we're all together as a people, and we all have this time connected.
It's amazing. That's very meaningful. I want to, if possible, I wanted to ask you like one last thing. You've been involved in mentorship for about 2 years. If someone's on the fence and they're not sure I don't know if I need a mentor, life's busy, do I have the time? What would you tell Mr. Potential or Miss Potential mentee why it's a good idea to jump on board the mentorship bandwagon?
Yeah, I think there's reasons to have trepidation. Maybe it's around time, maybe it's around feeling like it's a program where it's kind of forcing you to be something that you don't want to be. I mean, I find that all the mentors that we have in Colorado, and certainly as we've kind of built the program and gone to some of the national events, the Jewish people, unlike any other people in the world, are just there to help each other. And having someone, being your thinking partner, helping through whatever things that you're wrestling with in life, I think that there's such power and such strength to that, and also creating a sense of accountability and creating a belief that there's more. there's more possible, and just to have someone to share that with, who's an objective kind of outside person. I think it's hard in businesses and in kind of other types of mentorship programs to really have that deep connection. There's just such a caring that the Jewish people have for each other, such a bond that to me it's a small commitment that, as a, you know, honestly, in so many ways, as a mentor and a mentee for me, that's made a profound impact.
That's beautiful. That's amazing. This has been such a really refreshing conversation. I feel like we should have 4 more, because I'm sure every time we talk, I'll hear more. But thank you so much, for coming on today, but even more importantly, for the leadership that you've taken, and for mentoring. I think that's huge. It seems like you told me offline that, like, some of your mentees have made very serious strides in their personal growth, and that's really remarkable and wonderful. And I just want to end with a blessing that you and your family should have continued success, and that the events of the next few weeks, because I understand that there may be some things coming up in your family, should, God willing, go well. And let's continue meeting so that we can build mentorship and connect Jewish people in a real profound way. Thank you so much for your time.
Amen, amen. Thank you as well. I'm merely paying back in a small way the impact that, you know, the Jewish people and mentors have had on me.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Adam. It's been a pleasure. All the best.